I think there are several likely impacts on the technology sector in Ireland arising from Brexit, not least in the area of data protection. I think it's fair to say that when most people think about data protection, they think about it in terms of their own individual rights and protection of their own data. What they don't often appreciate, however, is the benefit of having those uniform protections within the European Union means that you can freely transfer data within the European Economic Area. So it's very easy to manage data for all of your European business from a single European country and have that as your data hub. Where you need to transfer data outside the European Economic Area, it becomes more challenging, and we've seen from recent cases involving transatlantic data transfers that the country to which you're exporting the data needs to have essential equivalence in terms of its data protection legislation. Otherwise, it becomes very challenging to transfer the data, particularly where you want to do it on a systematic basis. While it remains within the EU, of course, it will still be possible to transfer data to and from the UK. However, following Brexit, and in particular if the UK opts not to remain a member of the European Economic Area, that will become more challenging. If the UK retains its existing data protection rules, then in principle, of course, it would have essential equivalence to European data protection laws. However, there's already been a challenge to the UK national legislation in relation to intercept and surveillance, and of course we've seen from the cases involving transatlantic data transfers that the issues with surveillance and intercept were core to the restrictions that were imposed on transferring data to the US. European data protection rules are of course evolving in other ways. Come May 2018, we will have the new General Data Protection Regulation, which, unlike the existing rules, which rely on a network of national implementing legislation, will apply on a uniform basis in all EU member states. For businesses that are looking at multiple EU markets, and in particular for those that are very data rich, such as social media or financial services, it makes sense to start looking now at how they are going to address the impact of the General Data Protection Regulation. That regulation will introduce a concept of privacy by design and by default, and it will also introduce a concept of a one-stop shop from a regulatory perspective. That means that businesses will no longer have to deal with a multitude of regulators throughout the EU, but will have a single lead regulator from a data protection perspective. The regulation will also increase the scope of application of EU rules. So for UK businesses that are dealing with EU citizens post-Brexit, they will still need to comply with some of those European data protection rules. So while there's still a bit of lead-in time before the General Data Protection Regulation comes into effect, it does make sense for companies to start looking at this now. And Ireland has a very strong offering in the area of data centres, data management, but also industries that do have a strong data protection element to them, such as social media. And we fully expect that that track record will be taken into account by multinationals when they're assessing the impact not just of the General Data Protection Regulation, but also the potential impact of Brexit.